But in this auditorium, we're about to hear from our sponsor, Gartner, with a session called The Power of Emotional Intelligence, Enhancing Leadership Effectiveness and Building Strong Teams. So can we please welcome Abigail Capel from Gartner.
All right. Hey, everyone. It's good to see all of your faces. My name is Abigail Capel. I am the program manager for our DEI partnerships. I work directly with BYP for us to be here, Gartner to be here. So we're really excited to see all of you. Going to kick it off this session with a video so that we're all on the same page when we talk about emotional intelligence. So it's about 1.5 minutes. Right, can you play the video for me?
Refinanced and they tricked me with fractions. Come on, Angie, please, my job's on the line.
Okay, honey, let's think this thing through. This woman is smart. She has degrees. She has business savvy. She has unshakable confidence. You have none of that.
You know what? Let me see if my head fits in the oven.
What you do have is EI, emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. You know what? Keep talking. I want to hear more. Let me preheat.
No. Seriously. This is your advantage. You really understand people. You're a good judge of character. You sensed Vanessa was a shark and I didn't. That's emotional intelligence.
Yeah, but how is any of that going to help me with her? Tomorrow she's going to send out those pink slips. She just don't care what's going to happen to those people's lives.
Hey, who's getting pink slips?
Oh, probably me and you both.
Oh, my God! I can't lose my job. I'm taking care of my parents. I have a foster kid now. What am I going to do, George?
You're going to be okay, Ernie. Okay, you'll find another job. And do you know why?
Huh.
Because you, my friend, have emotional intelligence.
Don't just make up crap. I got bills.
So we just wanted to show a funny video with a heavy topic, or can be a heavy topic. So again, thank you all for joining us. I'm going to welcome Lynn and the Gartner team up for the panel.
Thank you so much, Abigail, and hello, everyone. So again, our topic today is about emotional intelligence, and I'd love to just get a show of hands, and who knows the difference between emotional intelligence and IQ. Great, quite a lot of people. And I think for those who don't, I guess just to set that context, IQ, or what's known as the intelligence quotient, is really about how we measure a person's cognitive abilities. So it measures a person's relative intelligence. And that's usually around things like how you problem solve, how you plan, how you strategize. But it doesn't actually cover the full range of like a human's abilities. And emotional intelligence is really about how you're able to express emotions, how you're able to recognize, control, and evaluate those, but also how you use that relative awareness for your own behavior. So that's the difference, and we want to kind of dive in. And we're really pleased to have the guys here from Gartner. So we have Kedar Gale, who's a sales manager, Taj Bambra, who's a senior sales manager, and April Montague, who's the area vice president of sales. I'd love to come to each of you just to tell us a little bit more about your tenure, your location, and your role. Kedar?
Yeah, so in kicking off, Kedar Gale. So I am now 5 years into Gartner. I'm an area sales manager in our sales division. I'm based in our Blackfriars office, not far from here.
Yeah, my name's Taj Bambra, and I've actually been at Gartner 8.5 years. And I am in the same division as Kedar, but selling to different sides of the business. And we are based in London as well.
Thank you, Taj. So I'm April. I've actually only been at Gartner for just under 4 years now. Same with Kedar and Taj. I report to the London office. I'm the area vice president for education. So all of my teams cover universities, schools, colleges, trusts, and all of that area. Really excited to be here today, so thank you for having me.
Fab, so let's dive in. I'd love you all to just consider a time on when your emotions went unrecognized by a leader. How did that make you feel, and did that shape the way that you in turn now lead? April?
Yeah, I've had a bit of a bad experience with this one. So I think the first thing is, as a leader, you have to recognize that everybody is human. That everybody goes through different stages and paths in their lives where things are not great. So that could be at home, that could be because people are going through a particular tough time, that could be due to something like mental health, that could be due to something like the family. So we have to be very aware of that. And one of the first roles that I was ever in when I come out of university, I had a bereavement where I had two people very close to me die very, very quickly after one another. I came to work the next day because that's how I dealt with it. Because that was, at the time, the way I thought, you know what? This is the way I dealt with it. And I remember my leader at the time just kind of ignored that anything was even happening. So didn't ask me how I was, didn't ask me if I needed extra time off, didn't even say, April, are you okay? And I think it's really, really small things that we have to be so aware of when it comes to people, because that stuck with me. So, because I remember like 2 or 3 weeks later, I was like, you know what, I'm not okay. I need, when the funerals were happening, I was like I need a bit of time, I need this. And he was like, yeah, but you were fine. And I think that's really stuck with me now. So what I take as a leader is I really want to make sure that I understand my people. I know their life situation as much as they want to tell me, because I don't want to pry. But for example, I've had something similar with one of my leaders who reported to me recently, who has had it, and I said, you take all the time you want. You want a week, you want 2, you want 3, whatever it is. Go ahead and look after yourself and do what's best for you and your family. And I sent him a gift to his family's home, and I saw how much that meant, just that extra personal touch. So that experience I had has, I think, made me actually probably a more empathetic and a better leader, and that use of emotional intelligence to know and to understand this person's telling me, like, I'm okay to work, but I can see that they're not. Or I can see like they just need that bit of time. So it's something that sadly, I've been on the end of, but I think now has made me a better leader.
Taj, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've got a similar situation, and just FYI, my boss is here, and it's not him. So just want to call that out now. Yeah, don't fire me, please. So I had a situation which is more from a diversity standpoint. So again, in a different company, being from an Indian heritage, when it comes to weddings, we require quite a lot of time off because we like going a bit OTT, celebrating about a celebration. But anyway, one of the things that happened is that I went to the senior leader and I asked, look, I need some time off, I need to support my family. And the first thing that leader shared with me is why do you guys celebrate the way you do? Like what are you gaining out of doing such a big celebration? And I just don't understand it. Can't you just do a half day? Like, I need you in. And I stood there and I was shell-shocked for a start. I was like, okay, this is my boss, so I need to try and understand. I tried to ask in a different way, still said no. And then the worst thing was my peers within that same team said the same thing. They're like, yeah, Taj, tell us more. Why do you need all this time off? Like, we've got more work to do now. And I'm like, okay, great. And how that actually made me feel was the following. First of all, I felt like, being honest, an idiot for asking for time off. Because that's how it made me feel, that I felt confused, as if like I was gonna let down the company, let down the team, and everything else. So the reality was, I didn't get the time off. And one thing I've taken as a leader is that we don't know, so looking around you right now in this room, someone sitting next to you could be going through something or has something on their mind that you don't know about. So what I've taken pride in as a leader for the last 6 years is lead with kindness. So I've made a conscious effort as a leader to ensure that I know my people inside out. So I understand their celebrations, I understand their culture, but I also understand their family circumstances as well. Because what that allows me to do as a leader is to pivot in situations that perhaps I am unaware of or I don't understand. So for me, that's probably the biggest learning curve I had. So yeah.
Thank you. Those are both really powerful, I think, experiences. And I think the fact that you both said that actually use it to make sure that you know your people really well, and that makes such a huge difference. I'd love to jump in just to get some more examples on how you've integrated emotional intelligence into your career as people managers. Peter?
Yeah, so I think for me, when I was considering this, I thought, well, what does it mean to me to truly tap into that emotional intelligence and demonstrate it with the team I've got? And in thinking about it, one thing that really came to mind is the most important thing I found is actually understanding the people in my team. And where that stems from is going a layer deeper than, the corporate personas that we all may come to work with, and that defensiveness and, hiding things that we may not want to share. And what I realized is to really tailor the experience that I have with the people in my team, I needed to understand them a bit more. So initially my approach is, tell me about you, tell me about your life, tell me about everything. But I actually, got feedback from, a mentor that I've got that actually I needed to show some vulnerability and, show a bit of me to the team for them to open up to me. So what I realized for me is I had to take a step back to share a bit of me, which was uncomfortable. I must admit, I'm someone who traditionally, I kind of keep to myself, and my private life is here, my work life is here. But I realized I'd share a bit of myself to enable other people to open up. So in my team, I shared with people, some of the insecurities that I had as a leader. I shared with people some of the, doubts that I had from my background and my unique experiences. And I found that really helped people to open up. So at that point, when I'd shared a bit about me and I'd shown some vulnerability, I realized that actually people are a lot quicker to open up and share more about them. And what that meant is I could then start to tailor how I engage with different people in the team. Different people have different levels of stress, different thresholds for anxiety, all sorts of different things. So starting to get to know them a lot more meant I could really tailor that experience. And I'm still learning about the team. There's still more things that I'm realizing, but that's probably the main thing that I've done, is really trying to understand people first, then tailor the way I coach, manage and support them.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one of the things I can touch upon is belonging. So following on from my personal experience, one of the things I made a conscious effort of being in a very large firm is to ensure that everyone is actually, they feel like they're accepted. So one of the things we do at Gartner within the sales division is something called the DE&I coffee chat. So it's something that April and I implemented. So that gave everyone a sense of a chance to actually speak about things that are most important to them. And again, talking about Gartner, how we have a global DE&I calendar, and then what we actually allowed people to do is to vote on what's going to be most important to them within that month. Because there's a lot of things that people want to talk about when it comes to DE&I. So the result of that is that we had virtual coffee chats where we said there's no slideshows, there's no preparation required, it's just a conversation. And if you didn't want to speak or participate, just listening was actually something that we encouraged. And why that's been so important for us as leaders at scale is that we receive feedback that if you're just an individual contributor or you've just joined Gartner, you already feel that sense of belonging and connection. Personally, for my team, so building on Kedar's point, when it comes to that sense of belonging, staying vulnerable is key. So I actually echo what Kedar said. So immediately when I first met my team, I told them, look, this is what I'm great as a leader. I can do this, but process, admin, out of the window. Don't ask me about it. You need to find someone else that can help you with that. But the reason why I'm sharing that is because my team immediately started sharing their vulnerabilities, what they feel like they're not going to be good at. And how that actually helps me as a leader is that I can tailor my coaching. So what I do specifically is I do a lot of one-to-ones every Monday, and they'll list out 10 million things you need to do in that week. I just say, look, out of these 3 things, these are probably the things you need to get done this week. The rest can wait. And why that's so important, then that helps manage their stress levels as well as actually their workload. Because being in a virtual environment, you actually don't know what someone is going through behind that screen. They are working from home. You don't know what's happening at home. So you always have to make sure you're asking that question. And simply put, you don't actually have to be a leader to do these sort of things. Asking someone if they're okay is free. Kindness is free. And so one of the things we make a conscious effort of is to lead with kindness. So that's something I would say.
Thank you. And how about you, April?
Yeah, just to add to the points, because I agree with both Taj and Kida, I would say as well, it's just all to do with empathy. Because I think that what we all need to be aware of is that sometimes someone might be going through something that we can't understand, or that we don't necessarily understand because we haven't gone through it. But we've got to try to put ourselves as leaders into other people's shoes, to try and understand their kind of thought process and things like that. And one thing that I've been really vulnerable with, which I think is a theme here as a leader, is things like anxiety. Like, I've had anxiety. I'll say that to people. Like, I can get anxiety. I can get stressed about certain situations and things like that. But by me saying it, I've actually had people come up to me and said, "I've never had a leader say that before. I've never actually heard somebody say those type of things." But I think, and then I'll share my coping mechanisms, how I've coped with it, how I've learned to deal with it and things like that. So I think it's just like us as leaders just being so aware that, number one, that we need to be empathetic and that we may not always understand other people's worlds, but we've got to try our best to. And then the other one is exactly like you two both said, is the vulnerability is key, because as leaders, people look up to you, so you have to really walk the walk and not just talk the talk, which I've seen many people do. So.
Thank you. I mean, you all sound like great leaders, which I love. But I guess coming back to the audience, we'd love to know, how can the audience, any tips that you have, create an emotionally validating space that will not only increase productivity, but also build strong teams?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the main thing for me on this one was really, I think the first thing is, within a team, I think embracing individuality. I think sometimes we can fall victim to this approach of, well, we're all the same, we're all identical, everyone's the same. And I think everyone being the same and everyone being equal are two very different things. So for me, it's starting with embracing people's individuality. What do they bring to the table? Why are they different? And really bringing to life, what's the value in that difference for everybody? So I think that's the first thing. And I think just creating that platform, naturally you get people feeling a lot more happy and open to share who they are, their feelings, thoughts, doubts, etc. The second layer to that is, as a leader, leading by example. So what I mean by that, again, I've had great mentors over the years who have given me great advice on different things that I can do. So one thing I always do with my team is we do an anonymous survey. And I say to my team, look, you can say whatever you like. I can't promise I won't take it personally, but you can say whatever you like. And I give them a platform to share, what do they not like in the team? What do they not like about my approach? What could I work on? What could I improve? And I found that actually listening to people, as basic as it may sound, and then implementing that feedback so they can actually see that my voice was heard, you know, my perspective was heard and it was embraced, had a massive impact on people to where they felt comfortable to share how they felt about things. And I found the next level of evolution there was, it no longer had to be anonymous, because they knew as a leader, I would take on board their feedback. I was interested in what they shared, and it wasn't a trap of, tell me what you don't like and I'll kick you out the door if I don't like you. It was actually genuine feedback that helped the team. So I found from there, it really helped me to create more of a platform for people to actually share their own experiences and actually be honest, and have, you know, emotional platform to build on.
Yeah. Ash?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the key things I've shared with my team every time I've led them is that a culture is not created by the leader, it's created by the people within that team. So what do I mean by that? Essentially is that you have the strength and you have the skills to create that safe space on your own. And it goes back to what I said before. You don't know what that person next to you is going through by asking simple questions. Are you okay? Having that sort of environment embedded in your team straight away will create that sense of belonging, which then will allow people to be vulnerable and have that speak up culture. So one of the things I'll make a conscious effort of is that it doesn't matter if you don't have a senior status against your name when you go into a company. If you be that change yourself, be kind, lead with courage, and you demonstrate that, you will actually draw open spaces where people can be vulnerable. We can implement things as leaders. Like one of the things I've done is on a Friday, we have a ranting session where my team can be very open on a Friday and tell me who has annoyed them at work. Have I annoyed them? Has my boss annoyed them? Not
Probably.
You. Yeah. Other way. Yeah. So we go through that. So we go through all of them things. And the reason why I've done that, and it is compulsory for us to do that, is because I want my team to leave what is left at work and go into that weekend smiling. So when they come in on Monday, they're all guns blazing. We don't obviously just rant. We talk about some of the great things we do. But one of the things I've done in a virtual environment, so as probably many of you probably want to go into leadership at one point, you may be leading remotely, is that you can't see all the great things your people are doing. So what I do specifically is that I enforce my team to share with me in our Teams chat, what's that one thing you're proud of today? Anything big or small leading up to the bigger picture. Being in sales, we celebrate when the deal comes in. No one sees what happens leading up to that. So we make sure our teams are being vocal about the great things they're doing. So when it comes to that Friday, they can actually rant about the things they don't like because they've already spoken about the great things. So that's one of the things I would share as a piece of advice.
Love it. We do something very similar to what Taj said, and I think that this has made a real difference for my team. And it's how we phrase it is, at the end of the week, why are you happy that it's a weekend? So what are you happy to leave behind? But from a different perspective, what are you, again, proud of that you have accomplished that week? And I think, exactly like Taj said, what it helps people to do is number one, it means that people can actually be honest. I would hope that my people are as honest with me as possible. I'm sure if I've annoyed them a bit, they might not say it. But I think that it's been so productive for them as well, and it's actually something that they've fed back to me that they now do with their teams, which has really helped them as well. So I think that's a really key part. It's just transparency, just everybody being transparent. We know that jobs aren't always rainbows and daisies. Things can be difficult, and us as leaders, we're there not only to lead them, like Kedar was saying, by leading from the front, but also pick them up if they need it as well.
Fantastic. I think those are some really great tips and advice on what people can do to create those validating spaces. And actually, when you're creating those validating spaces, I'd love to flip it. Like, how do you manage your own emotions? Because I can imagine that can be quite difficult. Like, Taj, if you're having like the ranting session every Friday, I can imagine that must take quite a lot of energy sometimes to handle.
So I've got a boxing bag in my garage. So one of the things I do is I actually tell my team if I've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm not afraid to do that. So, you know, we're only human beings, right? And they look at you as that shining star, like, you are the leader, therefore you must always be happy. You must always be energized, motivated, but we are human, right? And one of the things that I do is I tell them straight away if I'm not having a great day. And then the reason why I do that immediately is that my emotions all of a sudden wear down straight away because they start asking what has happened, what is going on in your world. And then I share, obviously, in limitations. I don't want to share too much because as a leader, you have to stay consistent with your messaging with all your team. You have to be consistent with that. And I think one of the key things I do is that you've got to stay vulnerable. You've got to open up. But other things to manage my emotions, I actually, by example, I walk away from my desk. I switch my laptop off. I message my manager, and he's great, by the way, because he actually trying to get brownie points here. But one of the things I'd say is that I'll tell him that I'm not having a good day. I need to walk away from my desk. And look, I do things that I enjoy, and I encourage my team. I'm like, look, if you like playing, I don't know, FIFA, go and do that for 10 minutes, then come and speak to me. If you want to go for a walk, if you want to go to the gym, if you want to do this, go and do that. So I'd make that conscious effort myself to do the same, so they can see that I've disappeared. So don't be afraid to do that. The reality is it's just a job, right? And that's the biggest thing I can say as well.
Great advice. Kedar, April?
For me, I think it's probably twofold. So I'm not going to lie. One side is I may drag my team to my fiance here and there. May happen here and there. So there is an element of ranting, right? And I think it is important Because look, sometimes in the heat of the moment, when emotions are high, we're all human, we're all people. Even though we're leaders, it doesn't mean we're immune to these feelings. So for me, sometimes it's important to rant in a safe space, which for me is at home. And what that means is I can get all of the instant emotion and feelings out of the way, and I can come back and I can approach the situation objectively and respectfully. So for me, sometimes it's being able to release those emotions, because the alternative sometimes is letting them build, 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 and sometimes that can actually be a worse result. So I think for me, it's really about being able to rant in a safe space, but also not always reacting in the moment. Being able to take time and revisit something, and maybe revisit it with a cooler head or with a bigger vision of what the bigger picture is. So, so yeah, that's probably what it is for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that, kind of like I said at the beginning, we all go, even leaders go through times that are difficult or emotional, or, and I think that the one thing that I have learned is actually the more emotionally vulnerable I am with people, the more respect I think you tend to get, because then I think that people, number one, see you as human, and number two, can also, then they'll open up back to you if they're going through the same thing. But again, we're all human, and sometimes we all get angry. Unfortunately, I don't have a boxing thing, but I go to. Yeah. But I tend to do calls on a walk. So sometimes I'll do a meeting on a walk. So I'll say to my people, right, okay, I'm going to hook up Teams to my phone, so we're going to do this on a walk now. And then they'll do the same thing. And then we're both doing something productive, and I'm like, right, how many steps have you done? Let's see who can beat who. So, and then it's quite a nice thing, I think, to be able to do, especially if you're feeling at that time, you know what, I can't sit here, I can't be at my desk right now, and it's worked well for me.
Thank you. Okay, we're nearly at time for Q&A. So just a quick reminder, if you do have a question, just scan the QR code, and I'll come to it in a sec. But I want to thank you all, because I think you've given some great advice and actually touched on things like making sure you know everybody, leading with that empathy and compassion, but also not just holding space for other people, but allowing yourself to have an outlet as well, so that you can be the best you can be for your teams. Okay, and with that, if you bear with me 1 second, I'm just going to pull up any questions we have. Okay. Here you are. Question for April. What are your methods on coping with anxiety?
Yeah. So I've always been anxious, even as a child. I think I was always quite anxious. Well, my mum tells me I was. And I think that as I've got older and as I'm in sales positions, which are stressful positions, right? These aren't positions, and I've always been in sales as well, and I absolutely love it, but you can be in high-pressured situations, which can often trigger anxiety. So what I do to manage it is, number one, I do CrossFit, if anybody's heard of it, but I love it. It makes me feel strong if I can sit and lift a barbell, and it makes me, when I go to work, I feel like I'm pumped and released a lot as well. I think another thing that I do is breathing. So I really focus on when I wake up, sit there, do breathing methods as well. I think that really helps me kind of start the day well. Another coping mechanism I've had is not have more than one coffee, personally, for me. For me, that's quite important. Another thing is just being grateful every day and doing something that I enjoy every day, because I think it's helped me massively. I think at the peak, I was probably in my early 20s to mid 20s of it, but now I've put those coping mechanisms in place that work for me, and I have friends that have different things that work for them. It's really helped me. It's helped me in my role, and it's actually, I think I'm now even more calm in certain situations than I was before, because I've been able to put these things in place, and I know what works for me, for my body and my mind.
Fantastic. I was just giggling because someone said, at Taj's boss, please don't fire him. But there's another really good question here, which just says, oh, sorry, there's so many coming in that keep disappearing. How do you navigate showing vulnerability within the context of being a young leader who leads and manages people that are mostly older or more experienced?
Good. I'm happy to take this one. I think it's a good question. In my team, I've got people who are older than me. And to be honest with you, I found that I didn't really get a negative effect from it. My fear in doing it, if I'm being completely open, my fear was I'm meant to be the leader of this team. If I'm telling people what I'm not good at, why do they want to be led by me? So that was the first fear I had, is if I share everything I'm not good at, why would someone want to be led by me? Especially as a younger person in the context that I'm in. And what I found is sharing with people your vulnerabilities, but the fact that you're looking to work on them, and the areas that you're not good at, you want to work on them, it creates an ethos in the team where it's okay to not be perfect. No one in the team is perfect. So I think that to be honest, it didn't really have a negative effect. I think more than anything, it allowed people to open up, and it showed them that, look, I'm not rigid. I know that there's work to be done, and I found in my experience, when people know you're working on yourself as well, it motivates them to do the same. And again, I think it's just leading by example. So yeah, I would say, take the leap of faith and see how it goes. The worst someone can do is highlight to you what you've already shared with them. So it's better to beat them to it than to try and hide these things. And then a few months in, get found out for maybe being weak in areas that you wanted to shelter or hide away. They will eventually come to fruition. So I would say take control of it rather than letting it take control of you.
I think just building on that point as well, as leaders, we are not working, our people aren't working for us, we're working for them. So immediately when it comes to adapting to whoever they are, if they're older than you, more experienced than you in our environment sales, is that as leaders, we need to adapt to them. There are things probably they would know more than what we do, and building on Kedar's points, they're vulnerable with that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years of leadership, that I've managed very different teams. I've managed very young teams, very senior teams, and that's the biggest thing I've taken from it. You gotta remember you are working for your people, it's not the other way around.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm gonna go with our top voted question here. What are some free resources that you're aware of to build your own emotional intelligence?
Good question.
Free resources.
I don't know about free, but I'm kidding.
Yeah. I think I read a lot. So one of the books I've leveraged as part of emotional intelligence is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I found some of the exercises in that book really, really useful, very practical. So exercising gratitude, how do you actually lead with kindness? I think that's probably some of the biggest things that I've seen that have been important to me. There's also leadership books that you can look into. One of the ones that I've got is Why Lead Now? And that actually walks you through everything a leader doesn't want to hear and how you actually manage that. So that's probably the main things I've done to help enhance my knowledge outside of what I actually take from Gartner.
Yeah, I would say another thing to do as well is something quite practical that you can do is with your family and with your friends. Be aware when you're speaking to them. Think about, okay, how are they acting today? Someone's always told me this. When you ask somebody, how are you, ask them twice, because the first answer is never real. So always ask them twice. So I think that those type of things have stuck with me. If you can tell something's wrong as well, because it's a reflex, right? Someone goes, hi April, how are you? Good, thanks, how are you? It's it's almost like an act. Or just no, but how are you though? Then you're really actually thinking about it. So that's something that's really, really stuck with me, and an old leader told me, and something that I always practice with, not only with work, but with my friends and family. So I think that's another thing that everybody can do if you're thinking about leadership. Be very aware of the people around you that you're with now.
Thank you so much. Our time is up, but I will just leave with a final comment that someone's left. Someone just said it's just really refreshing and inspiring to see leaders taking a more human and less authoritative approach to leading. So thank you all, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you.